But just remembering that it's not really about just having more motivation. It's about uncovering more of the best kind of motivation, which I'm kind of speaking to intrinsic motivation. So we don't necessarily want more motivation from external factors. We want them to be more motivated internally. So, and with that too, like you may notice with your clients, or your clients may even notice this in themselves, that the more intrinsically and internally motivated they feel, suddenly, the more determined they become. But the reality is, we just help them uncover more of their internal motivations for doing this stuff. Back to Not Another Mindset Show. I've got an Ask Me Anything episode today for you. Bunch of random questions. I think last time we talked about everything from like, why are my clients making excuses, to what are your favorite curly hair products? So today we have yet another variety of questions to answer that you guys have submitted. And if you would like to submit a question for a future Q&A episode, and clearly anything goes. So if you want to ask about my personal life, if you want to ask about my favorite moisturizer, or you have a question about a specific client or certain coaching strategy that you want to run by me or get some more ideas on, please put your questions into the question form. We have it linked in every single episode, so you can submit it there. Every once in a while, I will also post on my Instagram and say, hey, here's a question box. I'm going to take the questions from here to use for my podcast episode. So if you're not following me on Instagram, that's where I like to hang out for the most part in social media land. Like, you will not find me. Actually, that's a lie. You will find me on TikTok, but I don't even think I have the app on my phone, because when my friends send me TikToks, it has to open like in a web browser. Anyway, as far as social media goes, if you want to hang out, come over to my Instagram, which is also linked in the show notes of this episode and every episode. Okay, so question number 1. When you're on a date, do you analyze their mindset? This is like, it's such a classic question because I get this all the time. As soon as someone learns I have a background in psychology, a PhD in psychology, it's like, oh, are you analyzing me right now? And the truth is, no. Like, I'm talking to you. I'm one human being talking to another human being. However, I can't really fully turn it off either. So I will notice things. So if you say something very fixed mindset to me, you bet your butt I'm thinking that was a very fixed mindset statement. But I'm not analyzing, right? It's just like those things just sound off like alarm bells in my head, and I can't really turn that off, but I'm not really paying it a ton of attention, if that makes sense. So when it comes to dating, I'm not going into a date going like, all right, let's see where this guy's mindset is at. It's going to determine everything. But instead, I do pay attention to how someone is talking about challenges or setbacks in their life, their interests in like personal growth and development. Because if you are pursuing those things and you are looking to grow and develop, or the way that you're describing challenges and setbacks as a partner, yeah, I'm looking for someone who has a growth mindset in those things, especially because I consider myself someone who has a growth mindset in those things. I also really like to ask, it's not always like a first date question, but I do ask what lessons that person has learned from like their most recent past relationship, especially if it was a longer relationship. Like what did you learn from it? And obviously if a relationship ended, then there was probably still some like not so great feelings from it. I mean, I don't know, is it possible for a relationship to end and both people are like 100% happy? I mean, I suppose it could be. We're both just like entirely done. Let's be friends. This is going to be great. Actually, I have had a relationship like that. But that doesn't mean there wasn't any like negative emotions associated with that relationship ending. Anyway, I digress. This is the problem with these Q&A episodes, because I'm not like on a set outline schedule of things to talk about. But when I ask that question, like what lessons have you learned? I have had situations where the guy sitting across from me will say something like, like I've never really thought about that before. And to me, that's a little bit of like, it's a baby red flag, okay? A baby red flag. Because to me, I'm like, how have you not thought about what you learned from that relationship and what you got out of it and how it helped you grow? Because like that is so much one of the first things that I'm going to think about any situation, bad or good. So if you've never thought about it before, or man, guys, there was one situation. I actually really liked this guy. We went on one date, and this was a year and a half ago. And his response to that was communication, that he learned really great communication from his last relationship. And I was like, damn, that's awesome. Like, that's so great. And wouldn't you know it, the guy who ended up having terrible communication skills and not responding to me. So that's something, obviously, that's just like an integrity thing. Like, don't tell me that you learned this lesson and then it be the thing that you clearly are not doing. So anyway, so yeah, I do pay attention. I'm not necessarily analyzing is the short answer to that question. Okay, the next one. I see other women in science on Instagram talking about issues in their academic journey because they're women. Did you experience this? Not so much in academia. To remember, I am a psych PhD, and psychology is a lot of women in that field, whereas something maybe different like biology or chemistry or something like that, you may be more of the minority, as most likely. Actually, I should have brought stats to this podcast episode, but I don't really prepare for these Q&A episodes, so I literally could not have. I just sit down and answer the questions and talk to you guys, which is fun for me. And I hope it's fun for you too, because I enjoy these episodes. And then I just go on tangents and talk like I'm talking right now, which is somewhat of a problem, but we can't clean it up. We want this to be raw and real and unfiltered, right? So probably different than someone who is going through like a harder science versus soft science, whereas in the psych department at NC State where I did my PhD, it was mostly women. So it would be odd to feel like I'm being discriminated against as a woman when our entire department is mostly women. So not so much in academia because I was surrounded by so many women. We were the majority, but when it comes to business, that definitely has happened. I've talked about this on my Instagram before, and I did like one of those trends. It was the God forbid trend that was like, oh, you did so and so, like, God forbid I did this thing, and it's usually like something beneficial. So I don't remember. This is like so bad. I'm like so sorry. You guys have to listen to my gears turning right now, but it was like, God forbid I'm like a hot female in a successful business or something. And my entire caption was about, yes, I know I just like called myself hot, but like, it was like, God forbid I'm like good looking and smart at the same time type of thing. Because the comments that I had been getting on my ads where there is photos of me and people commenting and saying, oh, what does this young girl know anything about psychology? Or, yeah, like, what does this pretty face have to say about mindset? Like, I've lived so many more years than her and all of this stuff. And yeah, so that has definitely happened. I'm like recollecting this memory. It's not a good one. During a health mindset coaching certification enrollment period, I do open up calls on my calendar so you guys can talk to me and make sure it's a good fit for you before you decide to enroll. And those enrollment weeks, it's like a Monday through Thursday, Monday through Friday, is just so exhausting. Like, we're talking like 15-hour days, sometimes more. It's so much. Like, I call it jokingly HMCC Hell Week, but it is so exciting and so fun at the same time. You just gotta like really go in for a handful of days. I'm like experiencing all of the emotions of those weeks right now. And so the calls that I open up, it was my last call on Thursday night with someone, and I'm getting on, I'm like, okay, I've just done like 25 calls in the last 2 days on top of everything else. Like, gonna talk to this person, gonna see how I can help them make a confident decision of whether or not they want to enroll. And I'm not kidding when I tell you she spent 30 minutes giving me backhanded compliments and telling me about how she's been in the fitness coaching industry for 25 years and she knows all of this stuff. And it feels a little bit weird for me to be saying that I know more than her. And I'm like, where is this coming from? But guys, I just sat back and listened and nodded and told her that I understood her and I hear her. But it's just like, again, because I'm younger than you, that automatically makes me less of an expert in mindset and behavior change. Like, I don't know. So that definitely does happen. Let's go to the next question. Without a coaching company, what's next for you in your business? I've mentioned this before. I had a one-on-one health and fitness coaching company. For those of you who maybe are just tuning in, don't know me that well, even just like started following along the podcast or Instagram within the last year, you maybe don't even know. I talk about it enough though, but I had a one-on-one health and fitness coaching company for a really long time if we think about it, because I've been coaching since 2016. And then turned it into a larger company, hired on assistant coaches, had a whole staff, everything. And recently, October of last year, so October of 2024, decided to make the decision to go all in on the certification because I was so spread thin, focusing on the coaching business and the certification. So this question is essentially like, hey, you don't have the coaching company anymore. What are you going to do? And to be honest, we are busier than ever. And I don't even know how it was possible that I had a coaching. I am recording this podcast episode on a Saturday evening because I didn't have time in my week to do it. So I'm like, how would it even been possible to continue to do what we're doing and also have the coaching company? But that's what I was already feeling, right? So honestly, though, we're focusing a lot on growing what we already have and not reinventing the wheel. Things that maybe kind of got put on the back burner for a while. For instance, our health mindset coaching certification, we have an alumni group for people who have graduated but want to continue to just like hone their skills, get continued access to the program and any updates we make, things like that. That was something that an offer we had, and we did it well, but we just didn't market it super well or talk about it a lot and wanted to like give more attention to that. So we've done that. I have a lot of DIY programs and workshops, things that you can like pay $97 and sit down over a weekend and learn about how to insert mindset and motivation into your copywriting and your messaging. That is magnetic messaging. That is that program that I'm speaking to. And we have all these things and they're incredible. They're awesome, very low barrier to entry for people to start to get into this stuff. But I didn't really ever talk about it because we didn't really have a plan because we had a whole coaching company to run. So stuff that we're focusing on that lacked focus, we are now focusing on. And I guess like, okay, this person asked like, what's next for you in your business? I mean, that's just like what we're immediately next. Down the line, I do have some fantasies about doing more like real business to business stuff and going into other businesses and helping coach leadership or teams on growth versus fixed mindset. So doing essentially like growth mindset trainings in a business inside a team to help them kind of cultivate a better company culture, to perform better, to see more results, all the things that we're kind of like doing on a micro scale, not even micro. I mean, HMCC is getting pretty large and we've had over 800 coaches go through the program. But kind of what we do when we're teaching coaches how to coach their clients, this would be like from a leadership perspective and like an internal team's perspective. So maybe someday, one day, it's on kind of like my bigger, broader wish list. Okay, next one. Is it better to tell clients that they need more motivation or more determination? I've heard arguments for both. Okay, first thing that comes up for me, it's not necessarily even part of this question, but it's in the question. We shouldn't be telling our clients what's more important to them. They should actually be the ones who are telling us. We should be looking in between the lines of their coaching check-ins and what they're saying to us. And are they using the word motivation or determination? Are they saying, I need more determination? I know motivation's not important. Like, what are your clients saying to you rather than you deciding what needs to be more important for them? So I think also with that too, making sure we understand how our clients are defining these terms. So is motivation like a a feeling of I want, a desire to do something, whereas determination is it's something that I feel like I have to do and I should do it even, and I have to do it no matter what, even if I don't want to. This is just an example, right? But your clients are going to have different definitions for these concepts and better understanding where they're coming from. So if they're saying, I need more motivation, like, well, tell me what that looks like. What does that mean? How would your life look different on a day-to-day basis if you had more motivation? And just better understand where they're coming from, because that's how you can coach them best. And I think ultimately too, like reminding you guys, I did a podcast episode on this recently, like the best type of motivation is the name of the episode. But just remembering that it's not really about just having more motivation. It's about uncovering more of the best kind of motivation, which I'm kind of speaking to intrinsic motivation. So we don't necessarily want more motivation from external factors. We want them to be more motivated internally. So, and with that too, like you may notice with your clients may even notice this in themselves, that the more intrinsically and internally motivated they feel, suddenly the more determined they become. But the reality is we just help them uncover more of their internal motivations for doing this stuff. Okay, next one. How did you like the F1 movie? I am a Formula One fan, loud and proud. I'm actually not just a Formula One fan. I am a McLaren racing fan, and Lando Norris is my boy. Also a big Oscar Piastri fan. Those are the two, for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, those are the two drivers for McLaren racing in Formula One. And currently, as I'm recording this podcast, I'm not sure when this episode's coming out, if it's near the end of the year or what, but it is July currently, and Oscar and Lando are battling for the drivers' championship, and I'm fairly certain McLaren has it in the bag for the constructors' championship, which is the team winning. I feel like I almost need to do more explanation because this makes no sense unless you're a Formula One fan. But then if you're not, you're like, I don't want more explanation, Kasey. Can we move on to the next question? But as a driver, there's 20 drivers and 10 teams, so 2 drivers per team, and each team wins a championship together. Those 2 drivers together are accruing points throughout the season. So as a team, McLaren can win, but then there's a drivers' championship. So those 2 drivers on McLaren are actually battling each other while simultaneously working together to support the team. So anyway, at this point in the season, Lando and Oscar, the 2 drivers for McLaren, are battling. They're super close for winning the drivers' championship, but together they're a powerhouse, and McLaren is just like sweeping the floors with everybody else. So that, oh my God, the F1 movie, I guess that's the question that was asked, right? The racing scenes were so fun. The director who did the most recent Top Gun movie, he is the one who directed the Formula One movie. So I knew, I was like, the racing scenes are going to be so fun. And it was so fun to watch in the theater too. And I will say, like, the plot was a little bit mediocre and predictable. I didn't really love, I actually saw this as a review of the movie and I was like, damn, I actually see that. So it wasn't my original thought, but then reflecting, I was like, that makes so much sense. Like the portrayal of women in the movie was kind of not great. There's like, I don't want to spoil it if you guys still want to watch it. And hopefully I just convinced you to become a Formula One fan. But there's like 2 women. One is a mechanic, not a mechanic. She's part of the pit crew, and she like messes up at some point. And also one of the main characters is a woman, and it's like she's to some degree like willing to throw away her career to like sleep with one of the drivers. It's, yeah, anyway, you just gotta watch it, okay? But I'm like, those are the 2 female roles that are portrayed, and they're both not, yeah, don't really love the portrayal. But yeah, in general though, I think having Brad Pitt is the main character, just to showcase like how large this movie is and like what they were trying to do with it. But I do think it's obviously going to bring more fans to the sport, which is great to a degree, until all of the Grand Prix tickets just are more expensive than they already are, which is already insane. But it's a great movie if you don't know anything about Formula One. If you do, it's fun because there's a lot of like little hidden Easter eggs and jokes that are tossed throughout, like where if you were a fan, you're like, oh my God, that's funny. I love that they did that. So okay, that's probably enough about that. Can you give us a cliche but very real piece of advice that we all need health-wise? I mean, very cliche, but very real piece of advice from a health perspective. Focus on the basics and don't overcomplicate it, is what I would say. We want to jump to extremes and do like Whole30 and 21-day fixes and all of this stuff. And you guys know this because so many of you are coaches who are listening to this. And that is not what long-term lasting behavior change is built on. These like short-term, really extreme bouts of things, like that's not realistic for your life forever. So focus on the basics. Don't overcomplicate it. I think that that's what I have to say about that. What made you get into what you're advocating? So why did I get into mindset and behavior change? Honestly, kind of started with the bodybuilding.com forums back in 2011, probably, where I got a little bit more serious, a lot more serious, honestly, with my own health and fitness journey and just fell in love with nutrition and fitness and all of the things in between. And I was studying psychology in my undergrad at the time and started to just have these thoughts of like, wow, this stuff is really turning around my life, like being, I'm going to use that word, dedicated to my nutrition and fitness and my health and all of this stuff is really has so many amazing carryover benefits to other aspects of my life. Like, why are more people not doing this? And it's not a knowledge problem. People know they need to exercise and eat healthy, but they're still not doing it, even though they know all of these benefits. Like, what's going on here? So kind of putting those things together, I decided to pursue a PhD in psychology and focus on health behavior change. I came across the Mindset Lab at NC State, and honestly, the rest is history. I didn't know a single thing about mindset science when I was applying to PhD programs. It was like, mindset is a science? There's like research on this stuff? Like, who knew? And kind of like fell into that world, which is so interesting. Just like there's that trend on Instagram right now where it's like, you can't tell me the butterfly effect isn't real if I didn't blah, blah, blah. And it's like, if I didn't literally just like land in the mindset lab at NC State, because that wasn't a specific thing I was seeking out. And now the number of times I say the word mindset on a day-to-day basis, and it's literally my entire business, right? Crazy. I should actually probably do that Instagram trend. It's like my team is always talking about like, Kasey, pay attention to the trends and do all the things. And I'm like, I don't spend very much time on Instagram. And like, sometimes that's to my detriment, but okay. Final question. Hey, Coach Kasey, do you have any plans to publish a book regarding mindset based off of the core principles learned throughout the HMCC program? And this actually came from Omar. He left his name. He was like, remember, I'm in HMCC. And I know, I remember you, Omar. I totally remember you. Books. I'm laughing because I actually have close to 100 pages of a book written on this stuff. And I started it in 2021, would kind of get away from it, come back. I had a book coach who was connecting me with agents, and we were trying to figure out like the best route to go. But we just played around so much with like, is this going to be for like general population behavior change, what they need, or is this going to be geared towards coaches and what they need to know? So to be honest, to answer the questions, do I have plans to publish a book? At this point, no, even though I have 100 pages written, but I do think I would have to go back and revise and figure out the direction that I wanted to go. And it's hard because, I mean, it was hard for a few reasons. First of all, because I was going the traditional publishing route. It's like, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it like the real right way, and hopefully turn this into like a revenue stream rather than just like, I could self-publish any time. Right. But difficulties being in, because the space that this book would live in is like the self-help space, most likely. And it's a really hard space to like get into and rise to the top and do well in, because there's just so many different avenues that you can go in that realm. And also, like a not so fun thing to talk about, but just so you guys know a little bit behind the scenes of like what this process even starting it looks like, when going to agents that want to pick up my idea and liked the idea, which there were a handful of them, the biggest issue that they had was that I don't have a big enough Instagram following. Isn't that crazy? Like, that's what they actually care about, because they know, they're like, if we publish your book, we want you to be able to help marketing it. If you don't have a big enough audience, then like maybe we don't want to work with you. Like, ew. Because it's so frustrating to me, because I know for certain that with my measly 45 to 50,000 followers, wherever I'm at right now, I am doing a very good job with marketing, and my business is very profitable, and we make a lot of money doing what we do compared to a lot of people who have hundreds of thousands of followers. So it's not really about your follower count as much as it is about like, do you actually know how to sell shit? So it was a really frustrating process. And I just like, I felt just annoyed by all of that and not really being heard or seen in that regard too. So anyway, it's been a couple years since I've even really thought about it until this question, if I'm being so honest. So I would really like to write a book someday. I actually, fun fact, when I was younger, I loved writing, loved it so much. And I wrote like two separate books, halves of a book that were fiction, when I was young. And I would love to get back to that. It's just, as I'm recording this podcast on a Saturday evening again, it's like, with what time, Kasey? But maybe if responsibilities can be diluted a little bit more for me in the company, and we get to a spot where it makes more sense, like going back to that would be great. I do want to do it eventually. Just don't know. Can't tell you when. Could be 3 years, could be 30 years. We don't know. All right. That is the final question that I have on my list of questions here this time. Again, if you would like to ask a question of me next time, please ask it. Don't be shy. There is a podcast form in the show notes of this episode and in every episode where you can drop your questions. So if you're ever listening to an episode of mine and you're like, I have a question about that, go to the show notes of the episode and ask the question so I can answer it for you. Okay. Yeah, I say that like, because we only have a handful of questions every time I go to grab them from these forms. And I'm like, guys, I know you have questions because you're in my DMs asking me them. Like, get into the podcast review form, ask more, because I want to answer them for you and I have fun with this. So, all right. That is all I have for you. No more questions to be answered for now. Until next time, I appreciate you being here. Thank you for listening, even through all of my Formula One bullshit. You're the best. And I will see you next week.